right, you gloriously miserable accursed, we're back. All of us. Kory Teneycke has returned triumphantly from Washington on a trade mission. And what are we going to do today? We're going to go riding by riding with Scott Reid and analyze the candidates. And we've got some polling from some fresh tracking from Polera research. We've got Trump tariffs to talk about. We've got candidates' policy promises yesterday. We've got controversies to talk about. But we're going to start with the indomitable, the inevitable, the one who can't be denied, Nick Taylor-Vasey. How are you, brother?
What's going on?
Nothing.
I'm tired as hell. Yeah. The fatigue of this thing is, I know it's only a few days in. It's starting to hit.
Yeah, you don't look like you're going to make it.
I'll make it to the end of the week. I can't promise week 2.
Yeah.
Sorry to my boss. Whoops.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a nightlight behind you?
Or are you in a Syrian rendition cell? It looks like they put that thing on your face until you break and tell secrets.
I'm trying to use that light to distract from the empty beer can just beneath it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's cool to drink alone and just fall asleep to old episodes of Frasier and then just sort of wake up and your laptop's still there right beside you. But
yeah,
it's just that's how it goes.
Those are Richard Manuel's last words. Anyway, what's going on?
Well, tariffs sort of blew it up yesterday and continue to blow it up today. That is, in fact, why it was a long day for a lot of us, because we were watching media avails into the evening and trying to make sense of it into the night, trying to understand the actual substance of the tariffs on the auto sector in Canada. And so the leaders are responding today by shifting their campaigns. Mark Carney is going to Ottawa to, I guess, be prime minister for a little bit. He's going to meet his Canada-US cabinet committee. And Jagmeet Singh is going to our favorite place of the week. He's going to Windsor, Ontario. And he's got an announcement at 1:45. He's going to hang out with local auto workers. And then I guess after those two leaders do their thing, well, we will have solved it. Like the prime minister will do his thing and Jagmeet Singh will make nice with the auto workers.
What color is Singh's sweater going to be today? Is that in the itinerary?
Sadly, no. No sartorial.
You just got to tune in, David, and be surprised.
More importantly, and on point, which Rolex is he wearing? Is it the oyster faced one, or is it?
Kory, just because you're envious. Just because you're envious.
I'm envious. I just want to know.
It's
one of the ones he's supposed to lend back to me. Anyway,
it's not as obvious as when he wears the suit. When he wears the suit, you can see the Rolex easily, but the sweater kind of covers it.
It covers it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a clothing strategy.
Yeah. All right, Nick, anything we should watch for today?
Well, Pierre Poilievre, he's going to the West Coast. He's like Ontario swing, a little bit of a Quebec swing finished. He's testing out Vancouver today. He's holding a rally tonight in Surrey, and we know what to look for at his rallies. People.
A lot of people.
There will be many, presumably, and then that puts a bow on it. Yeah, and Yves-François Blanchet is in Montreal. He's stuck in aerospace today. Brand new idea for Quebec politicians.
Stuck in aerospace blues again.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Nick. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And get some rest. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Jim, wait a second. Before you go, what should people do as soon as they stop listening to this pod?
They should read the Ottawa playbook.
That's correct.
Say, if they haven't already. If they haven't already. Politico.com/Ottawa playbook.
Terrific. Political.
I thought you were going to say sit in the tub and drink what's left of your beer. But anyway, good luck. Have a great day.
Drank the whole thing, Scott. All right. See you guys tomorrow.
See you, man. All right, kids. How are we today?
So good.
Good.
Great.
I'm back home, and as my cup says, never better.
Did you fix things?
You'll get nothing
in Washington?
Like it. Sorry.
Did you fix things in Washington, Kory? Are we good now?
Clearly not, based on what happened yesterday evening. Clearly not. But I think what was
coincidence. You go to Washington for 2 days. The moment you touch back down in Canada, the president announces 25% tariffs on our automakers.
You're just making sure you were.
Who are you really working for? Working for?
I think it's a reaction to that scene that Kory created at the Capitol Grill.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. I did sample some very, very nice steakhouses while I was there, which is one of the better one of the better things. I can guarantee that whatever trade disruptions are out there, they do not include Japanese A5 Wagyu. That was still for sale.
Man.
But
Man of the people, Kory
Yeah, I
Teneycke.
know. You can really connect to the common man.
I like me a good piece of A5. But no, what's so interesting about meeting with anyone in that administration is just how much they don't know what's going on. Like, not that they, aren't aware of what's happening in meetings or something, but the range of options uh, that are kind of before the president, and like they're not like, right next to each other in terms of options. They're on like a very broad spectrum. And I think how little certainty people in the administration have as to which direction the president will ultimately go. And they're getting a very broad spectrum of advice from the public service there, and from I think even from members of the cabinet. And but at the end of the day, I don't think there's a very clear idea as to where the president himself is actually going to land on these things. And it's like, well, we're going to present this and we're going to present this. And, he might do it now, or he might do it, like a year from now, or it might be staggered in between those two parentheses. And I think it speaks to the level of uncertainty that people are feeling. Like that's real. It's real even uh, in Washington at the highest levels. I think there's a huge amount of uncertainty as to where some of these big files are going to land. And I'm only spending my time looking at one, which is tariffs affecting Canada. Uh, I think it's reasonable to assume that extends to a lot of other issues and a lot of other policies. And so I don't know. I've been going to DC for a few decades now, pretty regularly. Very different vibe this time. Very much more on edge. Very much different. It's met a lot of congressional folks as well, and most of the conversations they started with an apology from the Americans to the tone and some of the things that were going on, and expressed some distress as to what that all meant, not just for Canada but for their own country. So yeah, it I gotta say it wasn't a super fantastic trip. I don't know if anyone could notice last time I was on. I wasn't the happiest version of myself, and it wasn't just the coffee.
We thought it was just the coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just ready to
Thank
Uber
you to
you
all.
a coffee.
Thank you to all the listeners who have messaged me or publicly offered to send me coffee in the morning, and also for those who've offered to try to deprive me of coffee in order to elicit that sort of grumpy presentation.
There was
Which
there
they found
were
entertaining.
stands. There were
Yeah.
stands of grumpy Kory, for sure there were.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right, let's get to
all
some
right.
politics.
All
You
right.
got something to say, Scott, before I take over the show, or what?
No, that's all right. Well, we'll pick up on it later. I want to pick up on something Kory said, but let's do it after the polling.
Do you want the polling or not?
I thought we wanted the polling, aren't we?
Do you want the polling?
I mean, I'm good.
I want the I want to hear it. I'm not sure I'm going to like it.
Right. Okay. This polling is brought to us by the good people at Polera. Polera, by the way, was founded by Michael Marzolini in the 1980s. So this company's been around for like over 40 years now, perhaps 45 years now. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, our Polera polling is brought to you by Enbridge Gas, reliable, affordable natural gas to heat your homes and power our economy. So, we have an additional 500 cases, so now we're up to 1,500 on a 3-day roll. And as a consequence, I have regionals.
Okay.
So the top line is the same as yesterday: 45 Liberal, 36 Conservative, 9 NDP, 5 Bloc, 2 PPC, and 2 Green Party. 17% undecided. Atlantic. Liberals 59, Conservatives 29, NDP 9. So that is
Overstate.
context helpfully provided by Polera. That is bigger than the Liberal wins in 21 and 19, but not quite as big as the win in 2015.
But it's also the relative swing from where we were with the Conservatives ahead in Atlantic Canada.
But this just proves how clever it was to exempt home heating oil from the carbon tax in Atlantic Canada.
That's
because
right.
this is
genius.
It certainly got the ball rolling.
Wow. Boy, oh boy, if you didn't pick that piece of yarn out of the sweater, who knows how the thing would have unraveled.
Exactly. My God. Quebec, Liberals 44, Conservatives 23, Bloc 22. Liberals leading the Bloc by 17 points among Francophones. Hey, look, we've got a guest.
We have a guest, a sleepy guest.
Oh, sweet. Liberals leading the Bloc by 17 points among Francophones. This will be one to watch because the Carney campaign's off to a rocky start in Quebec.
Yeah.
I think they're probably fortunate to have the channel changer they got last night on the topic because Quebec was starting to swirl around him as an issue. But anyway, at the moment, the numbers are astonishing. Ontario, Liberals 47, Conservatives 36, NDP 10. That is only slightly above the votes they've gotten in Ontario in the last 3 campaigns, but slightly above that figure. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and I presume Manitoba is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. Conservatives 43, Liberals 40, NDP 13. In that region, the Liberals have gotten 19% in the last 2 elections.
Yep.
So that means the city of Winnipeg has got to be like 70-30 or something. Like
solid red. Solid red. Alberta, Conservatives 55, Liberals 32, NDP 8. Polera tells me that if this holds, it would be the best showing for the Liberals in Alberta since 1968. And British Columbia, Liberals 43, Conservatives 42, NDP 10. And Polera tells me that both the Liberals and the CPC are up 10 points from the last election, both of them. And the NDP are down 19 points from the last election.
I wonder, does that advantage the Conservatives because the Liberals rely on 3-way splits to squeak out and play, or is it going to fall differently? Sometimes that'll advantage the Conservatives, some ridings will advantage the Liberals. Like it screws up the traditional riding math of lower main.
Well, it depends how evenly those NDP votes are being distributed.
I think on balance, it will mostly benefit the Conservatives. All
right, Scott, that's the report from Polera. So why don't we start with you and why don't you take a premature victory lap?
Premature, yes, by all means. Well, I think this thing is over. If there's a God out there, you can't touch us. We're beyond your reach. This victory is sealed. I just want to, we got a massive amount of political sorcery to imagine and predictions to make as the tariffs, as we knew inevitably, as the tariffs now land at the beginning of this campaign. So we are already after 4 or 5 days moving into a new phase, and it'll be this week and next week, and it just catapults us into a whole different kind of discussion and a very different kind of campaign. So I just want to say very succinctly off the top, even in listening to Kory, it just reinforces something before we even get to the politics, which is it's scary. Like, it's genuinely scary. Because, I was on TV last night and I found myself talking, well, now that you're going to have the prime minister is going to actually be in the role of the prime minister. So that probably advantages the Liberal campaign. And this puts Trump more focused. And as I'm talking about it from a reptilian political perspective, I couldn't help but think to myself, but Jesus Christ, like, fear has shown up in this election all of a sudden, like real fear. Like 125,000 auto workers could find themselves with layoff notices in the next few days. And that's not an exaggeration. Like, literally a large percentage of those people could find themselves with their lines shut down. I remember when I was a kid, when my mother worked, at the Nortel plant, and you would get like the layoff notice, and she would be off work for 6 months. And then you'd hope, oh, they're laying the third line off, so there's no more midnights, which means like you don't get work. And and that's the world those people are going to be in. It's hundreds of thousands of jobs more. So all I'm trying to say, I guess, is like it is a really, like, it's going to change everything about this campaign, and it's going to change the country, because this is I don't think it's like the last, like 2 months ago. Like this one they feel more, and Kory, you can offer insight on this. This feels a little more jaw set. I'm sure there'll be erraticism and craziness out of the White House. I'm sure next week will be a moving target, but it feels like, no, we're not fucking around now. And we don't care if it's crazy. We don't care if the markets go nuts. We decided after 1 month, this is the course, and it's going to break homes, and it's going to break people, and it's going to cost jobs. And it just changes the stakes. So anyway, that's my sermonizing, but fear now hovers over this campaign. I think real fear.
Well, that was very much the presentation that I heard last night from David Coletto. I was doing an Empire Club thing. I was cheating on Scott with a different liberal, Seamus O'Regan, and Kathleen Monk was there. But Coletto did a presentation, and his whole thing was about how things are moving from scarcity to precarity, and this shift in terms of public sentiment and sort of, where the public is coming at this, like from, I'm getting less than I got before and I have some economic anxiety, to one that is more about like, Jesus Christ, the world's falling down around my ears. And the level of anxiety and the nature of that anxiety has changed from the personal to something much broader and much deeper and much more sinister. So I think there's that, but the other thing that he put up there, which I thought was instructive, and somebody should, take a picture of that, or they should go and look at Coletto's website and send it to the Conservative War Room, because it was the word cloud of, unprompted issues brought forward by people during polling in the past year, and then those in like the past month. And the past year was like housing, interest rates, food prices, like it was all of those personal scarcity, oriented things around cost of living. Like that's what it leapt off the page at you. And what the one for the last month is, it's 2 words: Trump and tariffs, and then a bunch of other things that are tangential to that. But it's like, as big as you could, as you could ever imagine having that be in a word cloud. And it is just so obvious the role that is playing in terms of driving the electorate. Basically, it's the only thing people are thinking about.
It's like the Conservatives are winning the 2024 campaign, but it's 2025.
Yeah. But
that is the whole story.
And they have like 2 problems, right? They have some problems of their own making in terms of how they're choosing strategies that continue to allow people to link them to Trump. And then they have Danielle Smith, right? They have friends like that, who are out there, who are driving like the most toxic possible narrative, which is to put the Conservatives in some sort of conciliatory position with Trump repeatedly. So they are just squeezed on this issue, and the timing really couldn't be worse for all of those things to come together.
It has come to my attention that I, Gary, the AI-generated voice who shills for air quotes media, am not popular with our listeners on YouTube. Or should I say one listener goes by an alias of cutlery and soiled clothing. Well, suck it, Fork Laundry. This one's for you. Actually, Forky, it's a proposal for everybody, and you're gonna like it. Advertise on air quotes pods, and you can get my nauseating voice off the air, because your message will be read by one of our influential and human hosts, David Herle, Kate Hammer, or Mike McDonald. Or just record any piece of creative in your ad agency's fancy production studio and send it to us. Either way, you'll be reaching Canada's most influential listeners at this crucial intersection of politics, and who knows what the fuck happens next. Trump, a new prime minister, new economic policy, a whole new world order. Baby! My data points are tingling. Curse of Politics, the Hurly-Burly, and Hotel Pacifico have the ears of cabinet ministers, elected officials, and the political class, leading journalists, the C-suite, and tens of thousands of engaged Canadians. Prime influence time. So let's do Forky a solid. Email us at contact@airquotesmedia.com to get rid of Gary and get your message to the decision makers.
But don't you think that in the Scott Stinson had a column today about having been to Poilievre rally the other night and how it really was a speech that could have been delivered 6 months ago and hasn't adapted. So you can criticize it from that level, but as a campaign, do you not think they're landing some shots to Carney's body this week?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so, but it's also the difference is that Carney's still in his honeymoon stage, right? Where a lot of his flaws are going to be overlooked by voters who are scared, right? And Poilievre is out of that stage, so all his flaws are now being magnified. So when the attacks that are being landed on Carney don't do anything to actually address some of those weaknesses as well, I don't know that it benefits. I think they're chipping away at the edges, but they're not getting to the core of what's causing them a problem.
I think it's an interesting question. If you execute extremely well off of your strategy, but your strategy is flawed, is that a good campaign? I don't know. I'm much more worried about the blows that Carney is taking in Quebec, and I don't want to exaggerate them or underestimate them, but I'm more worried when it comes to Carney and altering his connection with voters. I'm much more worried about Blanchette right now than I am about Poilievre. Now, we'll have to see. I assume we're going to get a wave of CPC ads that are going to try to do some real damage, but yeah, I don't know.
I think the stuff on Brookfield and moving the jobs, I still think that's the best attack that they've leveled, because it's so on what I think the ballot question should be, which is vis-a-vis Trump. And I think, the second best one is probably the stuff on, blind trust, but, offshore money for investments and all of that, which is not him personally. It's a company he was associated with, but it tells a story that questions the motive and the patriotism of the candidate they're facing during an election campaign that is being defined by hyper-nationalism in Canada, vis-a-vis the US and other things. So, I actually think those attacks are probably the best ones to be doubling down on.
Yeah, that pool is a deep one. And this is the problem, I think, for the Carney campaign on the Brookfield stuff, is that there's no bottom to that, right? There are so many companies held in there. There's so many different practices of global finance that people like Mark Carney might find to be perfectly normal and reasonable, but that sound outrageous to most Canadians.
And he clearly can't be briefed on it. He's beyond.
That's right.
Crisp brief, because yesterday when he was responding to this and he started talking about liquidity,
he has a reasonable answer on the Bermuda thing, but he didn't deliver it.
It was
because it's not about
it's an efficiency of taxation. Nevertheless, we're still actually taxed as Canadian companies and so on and so. But it was the answer.
It's a classic. If you're explaining, you're losing, right? He wasn't responding to the concern underneath that story in a way that was credible.
I just want to pull on one thing. My point, though, specifically, is that Carney, as an incredibly capable, smart person who knows that issue set better than anyone that's briefing him, is invulnerable to taking a political brief about how to answer that. That's what I'm getting. And he's therefore answering it in keeping with his own knowledge and instincts. And those aren't good political answers. And I'm not asking for him to be glib. I think that it's the right answer. But when he slides into PowerPoint presentation vocabulary, it's a problem.
Yeah, and the tone is also not good for him, I think, in that.
The Carney piece is the important piece, though, in these attacks. Brookfield's not on the ballot. You got to be tying Carney, and Brookfield is the example. So, you were the chair when you made this decision. You were in charge when this happened. You were that. That's the piece that really, I think, makes these attacks more damaging. And look, I think the Conservatives have been doing a pretty good job of driving that. I just think there's a lot of other chaff in the air. And I'm not sure all of it is as helpful. Whether or not he has been financially successful, I think is less interesting, and probably for some people who are going and voting for him, actually a positive, right? Like, oh, well, being
Yeah.
successful is not normally a disqualifying factor for leadership and things. But, decisions are that question your commitment to the country and its economic success, I think could not be more on point.
And I would just add to that, like, I think on the left flank, the vulnerability is also to use these to build a case that goes along with things like the choices that the Carney campaign is making around tax cuts, around the capital gains inclusion rate, and to build a case that, look, this is a guy who spent his career planning for billionaires and big businesses, and he's now making policy choices that will benefit those people because that's what he knows.
I hear
Well,
you,
that's a different argument.
I hear you, and I don't want to dismiss this or diminish it in any respect, but this is the day after Trump announced these tariffs. Like, the big picture just got really fucking big. And with Carney coming off the campaign trail, they go in, they have the U.S. cabinet committee. They're going to have a substantive response. There's going to have to be some kind of policy response. There's going to be questions about when and how he's going to end up speaking with Donald Trump, whether that's by phone at first or whether he does end up in Washington over the course of the campaign. There's a question of how all this plays out. It seems like it sidelines Poilievre as just a politician, so that seems to advantage the Liberals. But this is all risk too. Like, it's a scary time, and suddenly people are going to be paying careful attention to what Carney does. Does it help the country? Does it hurt the country? Does he own the pain that we could be into 3 weeks of real economic distress by the time Election Day arrives? And how much of that arrives on him? Are people still saying, well, he's the right guy to manage, or do you start to own some of that pain? Like, we're just moving into a really, it ought to advantage the Liberals and Carney, but my God, it's a turbulent.
Maybe not, right? In one sense, right? Like, I think the next thing that's coming is going to be what is Canada's response? Is it additional countervailing tariffs? And does that elicit another salvo of tariffs from the United States? These are going to be really important questions because, the level of reaction from Canada is going to be something Canadians will be watching very carefully. And I think the Canadian public right now is leaning towards more than less. But my takeaway from DC is, we do that and they're coming at us with both barrels, and you're going to see an even further and more rapid escalation on the US side as well. Like, these are the, not the opening shots, but this is like when the shots go from, a couple of cracks of rifles to heavy artillery going back and forth across the front lines of this. And what Canadians' appetites is for that is TBD right now. Like, the consequences of this could escalate very quickly. And where people are today is not necessarily where they're going to be, 2 weeks from now when they're laid off in terms of this back and forth tariff battle.
Agreed. But if the prime minister hesitates, when the bully asks for your milk money, the only choice in the schoolyard is to get everybody together and push the bully down.
I hear that. I'm just saying, where we're sitting and how public opinion is reacting to that now has the potential to move very quickly in ways that are very difficult to predict from where we're sitting right now.
If people assign the harm to Carney, big risk. Sorry, David.
Yeah.
I'm just actually more interested in what Poilievre's going to do today, because we have been talking about the need for him to pivot to this issue. We have been talking about how he needs to capture the zeitgeist of the country right now. And this is a moment for him, I presume, today, right? How he responds, both in substance and tone, what he says, how he looks. This is a big, big day for him if he's going to get on this train.
They put out a video last night, which I think is much better in terms of tone and substance on this stuff. We'll see what he does. I think it'll be interesting to see what he does at this rally in Vancouver. I think the video was good, in my view, that they put out last night. If he follows up with a rally speech like the last couple he's had, where it's like, all the greatest hits of 6 months ago, with a couple of weird conspiracy theory shit on Davos or the World Economic Forum or whatever, then I don't think he's helped himself as much as he could. But this is an incredible opportunity for the conservative campaign to get back on track, or to get on the issue set that is defining everything today and is so clearly, to everything that Scott just said earlier, so clearly going to be where this campaign is going even more.
But
Yeah.
boy,
Canadians are
Sorry.
going to be evaluating
Jordan?
the response. Yeah, I think it's an interesting moment to contemplate also, like for the other leaders, do you hug Carney a little today? Do you, as prime minister, not obviously as liberal leadership or liberal leader, but as prime minister today in the face of an attack on our country, effectively, is there space to kind of reach out and have some words of support for him in the role as prime minister? I could see Singh doing
That would certainly be
that.
counterintuitive for
I
Polyev, but
cannot see Polyev doing that, but if you were looking to reset people's perceptions about your ability to handle some of these bigger questions about where the target actually lies, it would be a way to do it. I still think he looks too focused on Carney, on the Liberals, on the past. And I think that there's obviously tension within their campaign and acknowledgement that what they're doing is not working and they need to change. But it's also, I think, very clearly coming from his own instincts on this. So I don't know that he would be able to do that, but I think that there is an opportunity here for him if he chooses to take it.
my prediction is he'll do a 50-50 formula. It'll be 50%
Yeah,
tough
it's
talk
not
against
enough.
Trump
Yeah.
and 50% the Liberals are to blame for having gotten us in this in the first place. And I don't think that will scan. And this issue set, at first blush, I think just almost undeniably, incontestably favors Carney because he's going to be back meeting with the cabinet, coming out with a response, reading and probably responding to the public mood. And so Polyev, even if he resets all and entirely around this issue, still can't muster the volume and the force of Carney. Plus, he is playing on the territory that we know. If the question suddenly is, this is the number one issue, who's best to manage it? We know he loses that. So the one thing I would say, because everything's got to be on the table, and I know this won't happen, it's crazy, but you have to think to yourself, there is a slight sudden opportunity of being the opposition leader because you don't bear the pressures that Carney does in terms of evaluating the likely implication of retaliatory tariffs and what that means and all those concerns that you have to weigh if you're actually running the country that Kory was just talking about. As opposition leader, you have the freedom to be a little looser, and I really wonder if, and this is crazy counterintuitive, if this would be the opportunity for him to up the ante by saying that he comes to this position reluctantly. This is not a position he isn't drawn toward, but given this belligerence, you can see no alternative but to put energy exports on the table. That if he were, Nixon goes to China on this, then that puts Carney in a position where I don't think Carney wants to go there, certainly doesn't want to go there yet, but that's one of the few things that he could do as an opposition leader that will cause people to say, well, I did not expect that from him. He would get internal blowback, which makes it look even all the more real to, I think, the observing Canadians. And it would distinguish him on this file. But I don't think they'll go there.
Well, that is the big opportunity because the person who can pull Alberta and Saskatchewan into this fight in a way that they have not been heretofore is clearly Polyev.
Yeah.
More than any other person in the country.
Well, and Kory, that would be a way. That would be a way because it's sitting around. It's difficult to think of a way in which Polyev looks more qualified for this particular task than Carney. But that's possibly one, and it could be an important one. If he could demonstrate to Canadians that he can actually do this in a way that brings both Doug Ford and Danielle Smith to the same table, to sing from the same hymn book, to have a genuinely united Canadian thing, that's an argument.
Yeah, except it presumes that Danielle Smith is like a good faith actor with a rational, motivation here. And instead, she's going down to Prager University today. to do her like
Well,
so.
okay, but on that,
So
like,
I don't think like she's not
can
going to
we talk?
dance on that, even
Can
if
we
he
talk
does that.
about can we talk about the Ben Shapiro thing? Because I think, it deserves a correction, because you've come at this one a couple of times about how this is so bad. Ben Shapiro is one of the few people in the conservative right in the United States who has publicly and consistently been standing up for Canada around the 51st
Yeah.
state stuff. One of the only people who's been doing that.
Yeah, but Kory,
And
he's also talked about Canada needing to be absorbed without voting rights for his people. And look, I'm actually not concerned so much about Ben Shapiro. It's more what Danielle Smith is going to say on that stage. That's the
Well,
issue.
yeah, but sure, that's true in Canada too. Like the problem is not doing Breitbart news. The problem is what you say when you do Breitbart news. Like, Ford has been doing interviews everywhere he can find in the United States, including very conservative media outlets. But why is it not a problem? Well, it's because he's got one message, and it's one that Canadians like quite a lot, actually. The
I'm
challenge
sorry,
with
man. If you fly to Berlin in 1939, it's a problem.
well, but
I think
but
she
but
looks like she's putting on a mega cap, and it's a real challenge.
I would say
well.
also her record of her performance when she goes down into these spaces is not great.
Sure, those are different arguments, but allies are few and far between. Like I think Ford should go and do Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's
That
another person in
Yeah.
that world who's stood up and said some pretty supportive things of Canada in the last little bit. I think he should go down there and do that show and invite him to come up to Montreal for the next UFC fight, which seemingly Rogan's hesitant to do because he doesn't want to get booed. So I
Ford's earned
think.
some. He's earned some rope. I would say, by the way, this underscores something else that's happened in this last couple of days, which is we've seen the stampeding return of the premiers to this election. So Ford last night, immediately, Carney's on the phone with Ford, and they're talking about how they're aligned. We're going to hear more from Ford. Do we get electricity exports being put back on the table to scare the bejesus out of Michigan? I don't want to put you in an awkward spot, Kory, but like I just think suddenly that feels like it's possible in the next couple of days. And you've got Smith down in the States. And there's worries that behind the scenes, she's trying to negotiate some sort of privileged relationship in terms of an energy corridor. You put all those things, those are all matches that could light Poilievre on fire. It's another reason why I think he should get ahead of it, show leadership, and not be dragged around by the premiers who are taking a position that he won't, or the premiers who are taking a position that harms him.
Well, there are opportunities too. Like I'll to disclose this. I've for more than 2 years I've been pushing polio people to develop a relationship with Ford and offering to make those bridges and connections. And for whatever reason they haven't wanted to do that. But would it be smart for Poilievre to be on the phone with premiers going through this? Yes, but that would require you to pick up the fucking phone and do that. I think most compelling case that I'd make to folks around Poilievre on this, which we started to earlier, is that I think he has a better opportunity than anyone else in the field to actually pull the country together when it comes to this fight, because I think winning this fight is going to be extremely dependent on getting Alberta for energy and Saskatchewan for potash and uranium on side and participating in the pushback against the United States, and doing that in a way that doesn't tear the country in half. Do it in a way that actually brings the people in those provinces along, so we don't have a national unity crisis on the heels of a trade war. And I think it's just a hill that's too steep for any liberal to climb in those two provinces. Like, look at these polling results. The world is falling apart for the Conservatives, save, essentially two provinces, Saskatchewan and Alberta. And those two provinces are the ones who are holding the biggest trump cards in this high stakes poker game that we're playing.
Could be 1980.
All right. To be continued, folks. To be continued tomorrow, I'm sure, and in the days after. So, just in the interest of time, let's wrap this up. Blessing and curse. Blessing or curse. Who's got one? Jordan?
Well, I'll build on what we were talking about. It's a curse going out to Poilievre. I watched his reaction last night after the auto tariffs were announced, and I listened very carefully for the language that he was using about Trump. And he's still using the same language that he was using a week ago, which is knock it off. And like, look, my kids are fighting over the remote to decide what TV show they're going to watch. That's when I would say knock it off. This is a declaration of economic war. This is not a fucking knock it off situation. This is emblematic of the kind of weak pussyfooting around the threats that Trump is bringing to our country that is sinking the conservatives. And it's right there for everybody to see. It's being actively crafted into their messaging, even as we know the shape of those threats, even as we know who they're going to hurt, exact industries, exact people, and still, this is the weak crap that's coming out of there. This is absolutely what's going to sink them.
Interesting. All right, Kory?
Oh, I'm going to send a curse to LeVar Payne, who is the former conservative MP for Medicine Hat, who has decided to join the little cabal of folks going down to Washington to try to negotiate the dismemberment of the country.
Isn't Sleepy Rob Anders part of that?
I don't know if Rob is. I haven't seen the full list, but it wouldn't shock me.
This could be my Reid moment, but I think he is.
Well,
I think
whether he is
I know they had
whether
dinner
he
in
isn't.
Central Nova last night.
whether he is or whether he isn't. This is the kind of stuff that is really harmful to the conservative campaign, and I don't think there's anything that the conservative war room or campaign can particularly do to stop some of these things from happening. But a curse on this guy, because he's doing no favors to Poilievre in the campaign by deciding to jump into this and be a part of this kind of stuff. It's just unhelpful. And
also,
seditious.
like, imagine
It's
that being your
seditious.
takeaway. Imagine that being your takeaway about what to do here.
Yeah, exactly. Scott?
Well, just quickly, I'll start with my curse on myself, and apologies to Bryson Jenkins for my beautiful mastery of detail and geography last night. Sorry about that, Mr. Jenkins. Best of luck. Not really, but still best of luck. But my real, I don't know if it's a blessing or curse. I guess it's a blessing in the sense that I say, okay, hats off, but it's a curse because I don't like the consequence of it, is I think that quietly Blanchet has had a very good 48 hours. I think he's been laser focused. If you watch what he's saying, he's going straight at Carney. He's not paying a lot of attention to much else. He knows where his bread is buttered. He knows where the threat is coming from. And I think he's easy to overlook in the campaign as we sit in English Canada. And don't sleep on that guy's campaigning skills. And so thank God they're not doing the TVA debate. One night tangling with that guy in French is all this fucking prime minister needs.
Yeah. All right. My curse is going out to the Carney campaign, which is, man, I just don't think he's getting prepped properly for these Q&A sessions, to be honest. I mean, Q&A should be where he excels. He's not a spellbinding speaker, but he's a very funny and authoritative and clever answerer of questions. Should be where he's excelling, and it did when he first entered the leadership. But latterly, I find him unsure of himself in those situations, caught up in language. I don't know what the prep is, but something's go off there. And I think his appearances this week have been uncertain as a consequence of that. And I think that has to get cleaned up pretty quickly. All right, folks, that's our
laterally.
show.
You said laterally in a sentence. That's very Oscar Wilde of you. It's very Salon.
I'm often compared to Oscar Wilde. We'll both die of alcoholism.
Among other sins.
Among others.
I'm not sure you have as much fun, David.
I haven't been in jail yet.
There's time.
Well, there's plenty of time.
All right. I want to thank our polling sponsor, Enbridge. I want to thank Polera for their polling work today. All of you accursed who watched or listened, thanks for doing it. We'll be back tomorrow. Kory, Scott, and Jordan, thanks for getting up early in the morning. It's great to see you as always. Take care of yourselves.